And so now it's time to do the neckband. So if you take your long neckband piece and right sides together, align the two short edges, make sure that the rest of the band isn't twisted, and then you're going to pin this in place and sew across a 1/4 inch seam and then press it open. To quarter the neckline, the first bit is lay it out flat, and with the neckline even and the bodice properly flat, follow the center seam down and you'll find the center front. Mark that with a pin. Now you'll want to not just mark the shoulder seams with a pin, because since the front is a lot deeper than the back, there's going to be a different amount of neckband needed for both sides. So if we just open it out, now we'll take the pin that we just made and we're going to match it to the back center seam. And now if we, just like the neckband, match those two up and pull this out flat, we'll start to see that the shoulder pleats actually fall on the other side. And I'm just going to keep moving the neckline around until making sure that the pin still stays matched with the center seam until it's nice and even. And now we will pin at this corner and this corner for our other two quartering pins. Okay, so those are all of our pins in. These pins don't stay as well as I usually use these pins for this kind of fabric. They stay in a lot better, but they weren't going to show up as well on the camera. So if I'm just careful when I open this out, you'll see that actually the pins by the shoulder seams are a little bit down into the neck. So that's why it was good we quartered it that way, so that when we go and spread this around evenly, then the neckband isn't going to be too much in the back and too stretched in the front. So now we take the neckband, and the seam for the neckband is going to be placed right over the center back seam with right sides together. And then making sure that the neckband isn't twisted, we're going to go all the way around and pin the quartered pins together. So wherever there's a pin there, and there will be a center pin, that will get matched there, and then our final pin will go over onto the other side there. So now my pins, my quartered pins, have all been matched up to the neckband and the neckline, and I have started using those thinner pins because they are going to stay in a lot better. And I will take these other ones out now that I've matched it up. And now, so I'm going to go through and finish pinning it together. So the neckband will need to align all the way along the neckline, and we're just going to go around and add pins. The neckline might need to get eased in a bit, so just make sure that it's nice and even on both sides, and then add pins so that the whole way around is ready to be sewn. I'm just going to show you when I'm going to pin this bit here, just as an example. So I'll pull it over, I turn it over, and then I'll pick about the midpoint of both. I'll kind of line it up to start with. Kind of give it a pull and you'll see about where they meet in the middle. So I'm going to go there. And add a pin, and then I'll find the middle of the next two. That's about there. Make sure it's lined up. Put a pin. It's quite drapey fabric, so I am going to add another one in between these 2 pins. And then I'll go back to this side and add in a pin there. So I'm going to continue to do that for the other half of this and then work around and follow that same method for the rest of the neckband. So I finished pinning the neckline, and if we take a look there, you can see that the neckline and the neckband match nice and evenly, and there are also no tucks or gathers. Everything's spread evenly, and that's going to give us a nice clean finish to our neckline. So the next step is to take this to the sewing machine, and starting and stopping at the center back seam, we're going to sew around with a 1/4 inch seam. So now our neckband is attached, and this is a good point to go around and just double check that you don't have any tucks or gathers, because you could easily fix that at this point. So if you go all the way around and you're happy with it, the next step is to trim the neckband seam. So make sure that your top is completely out of the way. You can have it right side up and then trim along the inside here, making sure that all of this is nice and flat so there's no chance at cutting into your bodice. Or if you turn it around the other way and have the neckband itself peeking out from underneath, then you can also see all of the layers. And then you can just take your scissors and glide along this bit, being able to see the neckband, and trim it down to 1/8 inch. So now our seam has been trimmed to 1/8 inch all the way around. And the next step is to press it so that both the seam and the neckband are facing in towards the center of the neckline there and away from the bodice. So once it's completely pressed on the wrong side and the seam is facing inwards, I like to turn it over so it's right side up, and then just check that the neckband is nice and flat all the way along. You can kind of see here the neckband wasn't pulled out far enough, so it's sort of folding in a bit. You want that to be nice and flat. So if I just pull that, I just want to go over the neckband, any spots, or just do the whole thing to be sure. And it should be nice and flat and pressed like this, and not look like this bit here that had a little bit of that spring to it. So it should look like this all the way around. Ignore that basting stitch, we'll deal with that in a minute. So you can see that this looks a lot better now since we first turned it over. All of these edges have been pressed nice and flat, which is going to give us a much better neckline. And the next thing we're going to do is understitch, which means this tiny little bit of a seam that you've left on the other side is going to get attached to the neckline by sewing very, very close on the neckband side to the seam line that connected the neckline to the neckband. I've just finished the understitching, and I'll show you that I've stitched very close on the neckband, and on the other side it might be hard to see because of the original line of stitching, but you can see this line here is the understitching. So now I'm going to remove any visible basting around the neckline, and this is our stay stitching that we done very early on in the first step. And in the pattern instructions themselves, this was actually mentioned a step or two ago, but doing it now is absolutely fine. We just want to make sure it's done before this next step of the neckband when we're going to be folding it over. So just go around the neckline, and anywhere, if anywhere, you see any stay stitching, which is that long basting stitch, just grab your seam ripper and then carefully take those bits out. Now the next step is going to be binding the neckline. So if we turn it over right side down, then we're going to take the raw edge of the neckband and fold it to meet that seam line, the actual stitching line where we attach the neckband to the neckline. And you might find it easiest at this point to press this. So we're going to go all the way along and pull over the raw edge so that it goes to the seam line there, and press. And then once you've done that, we're going to fold it over again so that this edge here, the other edge of the seam, is going to be on the edge of our neckline. So I'll do that first fold now, iron it, and then come back and show you. So I've now ironed it over the first time, so you can see all the way along the neckband has been folded over to the seam line. And the next step is to fold it over one more time, so that as I fold it over, the edge of the seam there will be what's on the inside edge of the neck. So I'm going to go around the whole neckline and fold it over and press it and pin it in place as well, because after we've ironed it, we will be sewing it in place. Here's the neckband, all pressed, folded over, and pinned in place. And you can see that the raw edge has been tucked under, and on the other edge is our seam, if you can see that there. So if we turn it over, this is the right side of our neckline, and you shouldn't see any tucks or gathers anywhere where the pin has grabbed the fabric, and it should look nice and smooth. And as long as it does, then you should take it to your machine and sew in 1/4 inch of the way, all the way around. And this will grab that bit that you've just folded over and hold it in place. So we're done sewing our neckline, and the next very, very important step, please don't skip this step, is ironing the neckline. Right now it's going to be slightly sticking up, it might look a little bit wrinkly. If you take the time to iron this right now, it is going to make a huge difference, and it's going to lay flatter and just look nicer and much more crisp. And I just wanted to show you what it looks like once you've ironed the neckline. The left side I have pressed and the right side I haven't yet. So you can see that this side lays nice and flat. It's going to look really nice when worn. And on this side, it's still sticking out a bit and just doesn't have that nice polished look. So it really will make a huge difference to just go ahead and press the neckline at this point before moving on to the next step.